The president's wife abruptly ended the contract, declaring an end to our collaboration with her company. I felt a sense of concern, as this client was significant. But then, a brilliant idea came to me. Confidently, I responded that we would no longer deliver to her. Later, the president's wife returned, her face showing evident shock. "I'm Mia, 37 years old, and I manage the company founded by my grandfather. It's a stable business with loyal clients. To safeguard the company and its employees, I continuously study economics and development. Our focus is on manufacturing precision mechanical equipment. Some employees have been with us since my grandfather's time, possessing expertise that surpasses mine. I frequently visit the site to learn from them directly. My dedication has earned their respect, and despite my age, I have gained their trust. I approach client relationships with sincerity and passion, which has helped maintain the steady performance of the company entrusted to me by my grandfather. Nevertheless, there's always room for improvement. I need to keep learning to further earn their recognition and ensure the company's continued success." Then, a remarkable event unfolded within the company. It began with the arrival of the wife of a crucial client's president. She expressed astonishment, claiming her husband had a long-standing association with our company, yet she had never realized it was under the direction of someone she deemed immature. The disdainful gaze fixed upon me belonged to none other than the president's wife, representing a prominent company that had maintained a contract with us since my grandfather's era. Mrs. Brown disclosed that the day marked the annual year-end celebration hosted by her husband. This wasn't just any ordinary gathering, but a grand affair assembling all their business affiliates. It was an event deeply ingrained in their calendar, and this year I had received an invitation and opted to attend, following my grandfather's guidance. As I socialized and exchanged pleasantries with various attendees, Mrs. Brown emerged, indicating she was representing her husband, the president. While Mrs. Brown typically remained aloof from managerial affairs, this encounter marked my first introduction to her. After exchanging pleasantries, making introductions, and expressing gratitude for the consistent special treatment we had received, Mrs. Brown delivered an unexpected statement. "I don't know what methods you employed to influence my husband, but beware, you may face dire consequences," Mrs. Brown warned. In that moment, her words left me bewildered, the true meaning escaping me as I stood there, taken aback. Mrs. Brown smoothly transitioned to converse with another company president, her demeanor shifting significantly, radiating warmth and charm, leaving me perplexed about her abrupt animosity towards me. Feeling unsettled, the year-end party eventually drew to a close. Opting not to attend the after-party, I instead decided to seek answers from my parents. My parents and grandparents reside together in our family home, and I often turn to them for guidance. Upon my late arrival, I offered apologies, but my parents greeted me warmly, informing me that my grandfather was still awake. Eager for insight, I sought out my grandfather to inquire about Mrs. Brown's behavior and reputation. To my surprise, my grandfather painted Mrs. Brown as an exemplary figure, a devoted spouse who selflessly supported her husband and their son. The more I learned, the deeper my confusion about Mrs. Brown's sudden hostility grew. A few days after the after-party, Mrs. Brown made an unexpected visit to my company, catching my employees and secretary off guard. Since I wasn't present, she had to wait, which evidently did not sit well with her. "I'm the spouse of the president of one of this company's major clients. Is this how you treat valued guests? It's no wonder this company appears disorganized with a young woman at its helm," she remarked. From my perspective, Mrs. Brown's unannounced visit was the unreasonable action, but unfortunately I wasn't there to voice my opinion. Instead, my secretary bore the brunt of Mrs. Brown's frustration. By the time I returned, Mrs. Brown had departed, leaving a message with my secretary that she intended to return to offer a proper apology. Consequently, I scheduled a meeting with her for a later date. Upon entering the president's office, I anticipated encountering the president himself, only to be surprised by Mrs. Brown occupying the president's chair, exuding an air of superiority. I initiated the conversation by extending my apologies for my absence during her previous visit and expressed my willingness to address any concerns she had. What ensued was a revelation from Mrs. Brown that caught me off guard. Goodbye to relying on inferior products from other suppliers. For a moment, I found myself rendered speechless, likely wearing an expression of profound astonishment. Mrs. Brown's scowl deepened upon seeing it. My reaction: a business under the management of someone as immature as you cannot be trusted. Moreover, your pricing is exorbitant for the quality you deliver, and terminating our contract to cut costs, she declared. Her accusations felt baseless, prompting a vehement rebuttal from me. I adamantly denied any overcharging and passionately defended the superior quality of our products, emphasizing their long-standing endorsement by the president. However, Mrs. Brown appeared unwilling to entertain my explanations. The conceitedness of someone as immature as you is repulsive, she scoffed. When I inquired whether the president was aware of this decision, Mrs. Brown revealed that she was currently acting as the president, wielding full authority over the company. She explained that the president had been urgently summoned abroad to address issues in their production line, leaving her, as the vice president, to assume the role of acting president. It was then that I realized the reason behind the president's absence at the year-end party. Tomorrow, I'll bring all the necessary documents to terminate our contract with your company. Make sure you're there. I will not tolerate even a second's delay, Mrs. Brown asserted firmly. When I pressed Mrs. Brown for the specific time of her arrival, she begrudgingly disclosed it. Leaving her company that day, I felt as though I was being forcibly shown the door. Their business was vital for us. Without them, meeting payroll could become a challenge. Gripped by a sense of urgency, I scrambled to devise strategies to prevent the impending contract termination. The following day, Mrs. Brown arrived promptly at my office. She placed the documents on my desk with a stern demeanor, urging me to sign without delay. "Please allow me to discuss this with the president," I implored. "There's no time for that. Both my husband and I lead busy lives. Unlike your modest operation, we are a major corporation. You should comprehend this, being a fellow business owner," Mrs. Brown retorted dismissively. I seethed with anger at Mrs. Brown's patronizing tone. Her unilateral decision to terminate the contract was utterly unreasonable. Moreover, considering our long-standing business relationship, one would expect her, as a business owner, to grasp the magnitude of betrayal inherent in her actions. Yet there was no hint of remorse from Mrs. Brown. Frustrated by her arrogance, I resolved to enact the countermeasure I had pondered throughout the night. As a last resort, I posed the question to Mrs. Brown with genuine concern. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" Mrs. Brown responded with a derisive laugh, mocking my inquiry. Observing her reaction, I couldn't help but smile. "Understood. We will cease all deliveries to your company," I affirmed. Briefly, Mrs. Brown displayed a flicker of hesitation at my swift acquiescence, but as soon as she witnessed me affixing my signature to the contract, she wore a triumphant smile, evidently satisfied. "Thank you. Our business dealings are now officially concluded," she declared with an air of self-satisfaction. Mrs. Brown departed, and as she exited, both my secretary and I bowed respectfully, concealing our inner amusement. I couldn't help but think that she should have scrutinized the documents more carefully. Once she was out of sight, I promptly composed a concise email to Mrs. Brown's husband, expressing appreciation for all past collaborations. I surmised that this alone would likely suffice for the president to discern the situation. Shortly thereafter, a call was received at my company. "Good day. I apologize for the sudden call. I was taken aback by your email. Could you shed some light on the situation? I'd appreciate a discussion, if possible, perhaps in person," the president requested. To the president's request, I casually assented. Certainly that can be arranged. A week later, the president arrived at my office, visibly uneasy. Accompanying him was Mrs. Brown, her expression reflecting evident displeasure. After formal greetings and light conversation, the president wasted no time inquiring about the contents of my email. Guiding him to a comfortable spot, I offered coffee before settling across from him, preparing to relay the tale, anticipating it to be rather lengthy. Before delving into the sequence of events, I explained, Mrs. Brown abruptly terminated our contract, and I felt it appropriate to express gratitude to the president for years of support before bidding farewell. As I candidly voiced my frustration, the president's complexion turned pale, and he swiftly extended a heartfelt apology. Mrs. Brown, visibly surprised, accompanied him with sweat glistening on his brow. The president apologized earnestly. Mrs. Brown, unsettled by his demeanor, stood beside him, her voice sharp as she rebuked him. "What are you doing apologizing to this inexperienced girl? Cease this immediately." Disregarding Mrs. Brown's objections, the president compelled her to offer an apology. Then, stealing a glance at his wife, he implored me, "Please reconsider terminating the contract. Our company depends heavily on yours. Losing your partnership would be a significant blow to us." He continued to apologize profusely. Mrs. Brown, glaring at her husband, directed her dissatisfaction toward me. "Even without this small company, our business won't suffer. I've already secured contracts with overseas firms to fill the gap. What's the issue?" Maintaining her assertive stance, Mrs. Brown's attitude left me sighing in frustration. Witnessing my reaction, the president was taken aback, then erupted into fury, scolding Mrs. Brown vehemently, "You're clueless. How could you act without considering the consequences? We've maintained a loyal relationship with this company for 40 years. Do you grasp the significance of that?" Mocking the president's sentiment, Mrs. Brown fired back, "So what? I'm not sentimental about old ties. Ending our association with this company will cut costs and enable us to lower our prices, gaining an edge over competitors. It's beneficial." The president's frustration escalated upon hearing Mrs. Brown's retort. "Allowing you to act as president was a mistake," he bellowed, his regret palpable as Mrs. Brown smirked triumphantly in response. In the midst of their confrontation, Mrs. Brown's phone interrupted with a persistent ring. "I'm occupied at the moment," she snapped irritably into the phone. However, her demeanor swiftly shifted from annoyance to panic and bewilderment. "Hold on, what's happening?" With a sense of anticipation, I waited until Mrs. Brown concluded the call before inquiring, "Is everything all right?" Mrs. Brown, visibly overwhelmed, began to articulate her distress. "The overseas company we relied upon has encountered a 3-week delay, and the products received are of subpar quality." Unable to suppress a mocking laugh, I replied, "Such setbacks are unsurprising. Our precision mechanical equipment possesses unique attributes that other companies simply cannot replicate." "What do you mean?" she demanded, her tone edged with curiosity. "It's the craftsmanship," I asserted firmly, meeting Mrs. Brown's gaze with unwavering resolve, though she appeared perplexed. I seized the moment to elucidate the profound significance of our company's refined technology and skilled craftsmanship. I emphasized how our products encompass unique techniques unattainable elsewhere, reliant on the expertise of our master craftsmen. As my confidence radiated, Mrs. Brown's expression shifted from defiance to frustration and resignation. With a triumphant air, I held my ground, meeting her defeated countenance with a sense of vindication. Having been vehemently vocal throughout our exchange, Mrs. Brown now seemed rendered speechless, her demeanor subdued. Curious about her motives, I pressed Mrs. Brown for an explanation. With defiant candor, she began to unravel her intentions, revealing a desire to secure her son's future by positioning him as the heir to the company. However, her husband's opposition led her to devise a plan, assuming the role of president temporarily to pave the way for her son's ascension. When an overseas issue emerged, Mrs. Brown saw an opportunity to sever ties with long-standing partners and forge new alliances, with her ultimate goal being to consolidate support for her son's succession. Unfortunately for her, my company stood as an obstacle to her scheme. She had sought alternative suppliers, but faced setbacks until now. Mrs. Brown's glare bored into the president, who sighed heavily, clearly exasperated. "You truly don't grasp the situation. Our son has no interest in inheriting this company." Mrs. Brown's shock was palpable as the president proceeded to disclose their son's true aspirations. "Our son has expressed a passion for agriculture, not business. He set his sights on attending agricultural college, not pursuing economics. That's why I kept it concealed, considering my brother's interest in assuming management." "It can't be," Mrs. Brown murmured, disbelief etched on her face. "It is. Take a look at this," the president urged, displaying his mobile phone. A message from their son, brimming with excitement about his acceptance into agricultural college, accompanied by a snapshot presumably taken on campus, was presented. Witnessing the evidence, Mrs. Brown's resolve faltered, and she sank to the floor in defeat. Turning to me with a plea tinged with desperation, the president implored, "Please, I'll devote myself to making amends for this misstep. Can we reopen negotiations on the contract?" I reached out to the president, offering my hand. "If Mrs. Brown is willing to step back from management, we can proceed as though the contract termination never occurred." Relief flooded the president's expression, yet Mrs. Brown, her bitterness evident, fixed a steely gaze on me, adamantly insisting that the termination documents remain valid. I refused to retract the contract termination. It was all for the sake of my son assuming the presidency. Mrs. Brown's stubbornness was palpable. With a heavy sigh, I suggested she review the contract documents once more. Motioning to my secretary, I requested the copy provided by Mrs. Brown. "Please observe the signature area." I directed her attention to a spot outside the designated section where my signature was positioned. Mrs. Brown, taken aback, hesitated. "Doesn't this render the contract termination invalid?" Admittedly, it was an oversight on my part to sign in the wrong place. However, Mrs. Brown, you overlooked it as well, leaving us on equal footing, wouldn't you agree? Mrs. Brown remained silent, contemplating the revelation. Seizing the opportunity, I offered a piece of advice. One who neglects thorough examination of contract documents may not be suited for a managerial role. With those words, the president swiftly retrieved the discarded document from the floor, scrutinizing its contents before breaking into a broad smile. Thank you so much," he expressed repeatedly. As the president expressed his gratitude, Mrs. Brown, seated beside him, wore a somber expression. Later, I found comfort in securing the crucial contract and earned my grandfather's praise for safeguarding our employees' future. However, it emerged that Mrs. Brown had severed ties with other companies, prompting the president to offer widespread apologies. I assisted him in explaining the situation to these companies, providing support as needed. Fortunately, they were receptive, aiding in the recovery of the president's company. Due to the turmoil, Mrs. Brown was removed from the management team, held accountable for nearly jeopardizing the company, and faced the prospect of divorce from the president. Despite her resistance, the president, feeling betrayed, showed her no mercy. Their son ultimately found freedom from his mother's influence, pursuing his agricultural studies with unwavering determination. For my company, the outcome was transformative. We not only gained favor with a major corporation, but our reputation flourished, leading to a surge in new contracts. Our sales soared, exceeding even my grandfather's achievements, and our employees rallied behind us more passionately than ever, dedicated to continuous growth and improvement, similar to the previous leader.